Do you enjoy working? Well, I hope you do, because we're gonna be slaves forever at this rate.
We're so far away from the American dream that it's hard to believe it ever really existed. It used to be a simple formula. If you got a good education and worked hard at your job, you'd have enough left over to support a family and see you through to the end. Today,
When the American dream started, you didn't even have to have a good education. You could be a single provider to a four people family, buy a house, and buy a car. And by the way, this was not only specific in America. In the rest of the world, in some place, you even got a house for free. It was just that kind of a time. Now a shack costs more than you make in 10 years. Good luck.
it's all fallen apart. Forgetting owning a home you'd be proud of or building anything meaningful, you'll be lucky to even retire at all. Over the past few decades, every single part of the American dream has been stripped away. So let's find out how it happened and why you'll probably never get to retire and the solution to this. Kids growing up 50 years ago had a pretty easy time planning out the
There is no solution to this. One of the big things that is happening is the birth rate collapse, and well, that's one of the big reasons why they are increasing the age of retirement pretty much every 5 years by well another 5 years or so at this rate, because you can't avoid it. No one's gonna work at that point, and all the old people are gonna be pretty much living in a Mad Max type of world if we don't do that. So there is technically no real solution, unless everyone suddenly gets 10 children. But the way dating's been going for, well, more than half of the people in the world, it's not looking good.
rest of their lives. It all began with a good education. It didn't necessarily mean going to college either. For most people, a high school diploma was enough to almost guarantee them a good place in society. You've probably heard about what it used to be like. Nearly every job was well paid enough to support a family on just one income. Anyone with enough discipline to put in the work could afford a house large enough to be a family home. Once you were
It's not even enough discipline, it was just an opportunity that people got kind of by default.
in your 60s, you most likely paid off your house, and your pension would be good enough to comfortably retire. But right now, it seems hard to believe that someone like a mailman would enjoy that kind of luxury of wealth. And it's not just nostalgia talking. In 1974, the average postal worker in the US made between $9,500 to $12,000 a year as a basic salary. That didn't include a cost of living adjustment, double pay on holidays, and tons of other benefits. In total, you could clear $15,000 to $16,000 in a good year, and the average home back then was around $36,000, just two.
Yeah, I was gonna say it. With a salary like that, you just need to effectively not waste all of your money for 5 years, and you pretty much have a home right there.
And a half years of wages could buy one outright, or you could spend a couple of decades living comfortably while you paid off the mortgage. But it's a different story today. Even the most well-paid mailman earning $60K a year would have to work nearly 3 times as much to afford the same
Damn, that's one good paid mailman. Woof.
home. These essential jobs, which
But this is, I listen, I worked in the government, and yeah, okay, listen. Almost no one actually gets the top dollar, okay?
3 times as much to afford the same home. These essential jobs, which are necessary for society to keep on functioning, just aren't worth aiming for anymore. What should be a good, respectable career barely allows you to survive. In lots of cities in the US, it would be impossible to even scratch out a living working one of these blue-collar jobs. So people adapted and the bar got higher. Nowadays, a college degree or years of specialist training is the bare minimum to find a place in the dwindling middle class. On average, people with degrees
And people are pissed because this doesn't work. Well, maybe you should not have majored in tribal street dances, therapy, feminism, something, okay? Maybe that's not really a worthwhile diploma.
earn over 30,000 more than those who only went to high school. But even then, it's no guarantee of success. It doesn't factor in the massive amounts of debt college will put you in, a debt you could be paying off for decades to come. With so many more graduates, there's more competition than ever for a relatively small amount of well-paying jobs as well. It's why companies have become so ruthless and uncaring with how they find their employees. When every job they post gets tens or hundreds of applicants, they can afford to be choosy. Today, nearly all companies use automated systems to reject most of the
Yeah, people somehow magically don't understand this. This is a seasonal thing. Well, it's not truly seasonal, but you will understand what I mean by this. You know, when I was growing up, the cool jobs were the doctor, the, lawyer, things like that. That was the peak that you should strive for. And these things change over time. So, that comes a time when most people go in X direction because it's the most well-known part of society, and it pays well, and that's how you get these situations where people are fighting over one job a lot.
Applications before anyone else ever reads them. If you don't have the experience or put enough keywords in your CV, it's already over. It's put tons of people in a situation where they need experience to get a job in the field, but can't get a job without the experience to begin with. 50 years ago, a high school diploma was enough to put you on the path to a comfy retirement. Today, you might have a college degree and you might be lucky enough to land what should be an exceptional job, but even with all of this, you're still going to be hard pressed to retire before your body simply gives up. It's simply a consequence of the fact that companies don't value their employees anymore. They don't need to, because today there's always someone waiting to take your place if you don't like the deal they're offering. A lot of
Okay, it's not the fact that companies don't value their employees. That is simply not true. That's an absolute lie. Listen, if you are high enough quality, if you do your job good enough, the company is going to value you. They're not just going to randomly, most likely, get rid of you. If they're going to get rid of someone, it's going to be the guy who does the job worse than you. Because finding actual people who know how to do their job properly is really hard. Most of the average employees in literally every sector are trash at their job. That's just the brutal reality of it.
these problems have come from there being way more people in the labor market. Now there's a bunch of reasons for this, but immigration is one. All kinds of immigrants.
Immigration is a lie. It's not. Most immigrants don't find jobs. Most immigrants are not fighting for these positions. This is completely a lie. Okay? 9 out of 10 immigrants that enter are not gonna even remotely try even to fight for the good positions that people want to actually get.
It's both legal and illegal add more supply to the market. For lots of jobs, they're desperately needed. Western healthcare systems and other vital industries pretty much run on migrant labor. It's gotten to a point where 20%
That's a lie.
of the UK's NHS staff are first-generation immigrants. For other
Okay, listen, the UK literally is gonna put anyone whose skin color is not white in a position of high pay and power, and then the system is gonna collapse. We kind of know how this goes. This is true for the UK, and probably true for the American healthcare system. Jesus, a lot of hey, listen. I'm just saying. If I ever went to the U.S. and I needed some doctor, I would be very, very, very picky, because a lot of them are now just kind of let through the system to be trash.
Are first-generation immigrants. For other industries though, the swelling of the labour pool means wages fall or stay stagnant. But it's not just people moving into the country that's making things this bad in the job market. It's companies moving their operations out of the country. So-called offshoring has almost completely destroyed entire industries. Manufacturing, mining, pretty much anything that isn't a service industry left the West long ago. 60% of companies outsource work abroad. Over 14 million jobs that aren't in the US anymore.
That's a lightful statistic. Outsourcing jobs is, it's not necessarily that you're actually, taking away positions of your workers. Outsourcing a job in a lot of situations just means the fact that, hey, we need this thing done, and none of us do this thing here in the company. Yeah, okay, here's a place in China that can, make a print or whatever the hell we need. That is also counted as outsourcing, and that is very popular. So the outsourcing thing is also not necessarily true.
60% of companies outsource work abroad. Over 14 million jobs that aren't in the US anymore. Even if
and saying outsourcing work abroad is completely nonsensical, because the word outsourcing already means that.
Makes the customer experience much worse or leads to an inferior product. If it's cutting costs down, then they're happy to do it. With so many other options, it isn't surprising that companies don't care about keeping their employees around anymore. It used to be the case that companies would reward their employees if they stayed in the job. You could build a whole career rising up the ranks of a single company and getting.
You can still do that, and the people who are competent still do that. The workplace and the possibilities are just not really accessible no longer for the people who are unqualified. unless you have, connections. In that case, everything's extremely acceptable and whatnot, but not typically.
Richly rewarded for never leaving. They needed you back then, it was just how it worked. Some companies still operate like this today, but not many. The benefits of a loyal, skilled workforce don't show up on balance sheets. They might have much more efficient ways of doing things, skills gained from years or decades of experience. But because you can't measure something like that, it's hard for a company to know what it had until it's gone. So managers and executives looking to pinch pennies neglect their duties to their employees.
So that means you have a way to actually measure it. Strange.
Sometimes they just fire them or outsource their work, but a lot of the time they just don't give them the right motivation to stay. It's been a long process spanning for decades, but we can see the results of it now. It's ridiculously more lucrative. It's become so normal for people to jump ship every few years. First is the problem with how hard it can actually be to climb the ladder at most giant companies. Before, when single jobs used to pay enough to let you and your family live comfortably, it was different. If you didn't want to, you didn't have to climb the ranks to make a good life. But now that the only top positions promise that kind of safety, you're almost always forced to keep climbing or searching for something new, always in a limbo state of insecurity, never knowing.
Searching for something new is stupid, unless you are, amping it up. Job hopping is honestly something that everyone should do. The reality of the world is, every single one of us, currently, me, you, watching this, we can probably easily be managerial roles. But people don't actually try to get to that level. And that's a problem. You should work a year or two in a job and then find a new job. Start searching, by the way, when 1 year already has passed, and try to just upscale it and get into a higher position. That's all that matters. And you do that in, 5 to 10 years, you can be in a pretty decently high position. If you're actually slow, even if you're not that good at it, because the reality is most people don't even try, and without trying, well, you're never gonna achieve anything.
Knowing if you'll get another paycheck. Today it's far harder to convince your current boss to give you a raise compared to convincing a new company to give you a better starting salary. Workers who stay with their current jobs for over 2 years earn a staggering 50% less on average than those who switch employers. It's created an environment that rewards jumping ship, as companies don't care about keeping people on either. They'll have no problem firing people.
You should never care about the company. Okay, listen. I never even once was okay sacrificing my health for any company that I have worked because of whatever fucking reason. Because at the end of the day, you breaking your back is not gonna even earn you a thanks. It's just gonna earn you getting fired. And they're not gonna say thank you. They're not gonna do any of that. Okay? You need to look out for yourself. The company is not your family. The company is not anything. It's just something that gives you money so you make money.
Who put 20 or 30 years of work for them, as you're just names and numbers on a spreadsheet anyway. It's an especially big problem for people who are towards the end of their careers, as it's much harder for them to convince other companies to hire them. All of these things have made having a job today like treading water. If you don't keep moving, it seems like you'll drown. Even with job hopping though, wages just aren't what they were. Today you'll be lucky if your raise even matches the inflation rate. For decades, wage growth remained steady, keeping up with everything else, but since then it's been a very different story. Now it's not like people are doing less work, in fact the opposite is usually the case. Productivity has steadily risen for the past 80 years. Improvements in technology efficiency and a larger workforce have made sure of that. We aren't any less hardworking than previous generations.
Dude, boomers had it so easy when they worked. Okay? A boomer did not have to deal with the concept of answering 30 emails a day. A boomer needed to maybe write a letter, send it off, and wait a week until the response, and then only something gets done. Okay? Boomers had the easiest jobs ever, where they literally could sit with a thumb up their a-hole and do absolutely nothing. Unless it was physical labor. But anything other than that, man, you're just sitting doing nothing because you need five days for your boss to respond what you need to do next or whatever. It's crazy.
generations. Productivity has only gone up while wages have remained stagnant. From 1948 to 1973, the two stats were in lockstep, both rising by about 90%. Since then, productivity went up another 70%, but hourly wages for employees only rose by a measly 10%. No matter what people say online, in truth, we're not really any less hardworking than before. So where's all the money gone? It's no coincidence that we've got so many more billionaires than ever before. The top 1% have seen their wages grow by nearly 140%, almost 14 times more than the regular person. People who actually keep society running. Which means there's simply less money to go around and therefore less money to save for retirement or ever put in a pension. But even the pensions are worse today. It was recently discovered that 9 out of 10 pension schemes in the UK have performed worse than the FTSE All-Share Index, which tracks the top 600 companies on the London stock market. They've become yet another thing for the finance industry to suck money out of. And when they get their bets wrong, it's the regular people who suffer the consequences. And it just means less money for when you can't work anymore. And that's if that day ever comes, as the state pension isn't much these days, but it's still higher than wages. However, governments across the West have been raising the retirement age, even taking that pittance away from the scores of hardworking people. In France, it got raised recently to 64, but that's actually generous compared to other
right. It was supposed to be more, but they started rioting.
Countries. In the UK, it's 66, and it's gonna go up even more. In the US, it's 67.
Dude, 71 is insane. People are gonna literally die at work at that age. Wow.
Gonna go up even more. In the US, it's 67. However, before we continue, I want to tell you about our video sponsor, Odoo. You see, recently, the Odoo website builder app that is so quiet. Beginners, myself personally, their homes. Homes used to be one of the most important ways pensioners today are securing their retirement.
Is this AI? I think this is AI.
Is through their homes. Homes used to be much cheaper, as we saw earlier. They were simply a way for people to build a life, and the market treated them that way. Since then, though, house prices.
This is what I've been saying people for a long time. If you can buy a house, buy anything pretty much. You're guaranteed a profit in a couple of years.
Have only risen, making their investments worth many times.
And don't worry about the housing collapse. It was supposed to happen this year, last year, last year. The housing bubble has been imploding for the last 10 years at this point, and it never does. So the chances are, if the housing bubble can even implode at this point, which I don't think is possible, because if COVID showed me one thing and made me believe that there is no, a recession is impossible, okay? All these bubbles, it's impossible. The global economic structure is too entangled, so they all are going to work in tandem, some magically, how making it so no financial crisis can ever happen again, okay? And if it does, considering how entangled everything is, and how all of the stopgap measures that were used to stop previous collapses, when it all comes tumbling down, I don't think money is even going to matter if it can go all tumbling down.
What they initially paid, even after accounting for inflation. If they bought early, then all that housing money didn't just go to some landlord or some corporation like it does for young people today. Instead, it was yet another way they were directly investing in their future and their retirement. Back then, the principal was small, so it wasn't long before their entire mortgage was paid off for the house, something that's almost impossible for most young people today. Often these homeowners are the ones supporting laws that make building new homes much harder. Enemies of change in any form, they block the building of new homes in fear of the people who might end up living in them. It's a selfish
goddamn boomers
move pushed forward by a small minority of people, but it means that barely any new homes are getting built. After benefiting greatly from the opportunities they had, they've closed the door behind them. But it's not really people who own just one home that are behind the ludicrous rise in house prices. Instead, it's the way that corporations and businesses have.
Was he gonna mention BlackRock, how it has been buying up every private house it can in the last years?
Used them as financial investments. Over the past 50 or so years, the housing market transformed. It used to be a way for people to get a roof over their heads and build their own lives, but now it mostly exists as yet another place to store money. Tons of that excess wealth made by the increase in productivity has found its way there. Corporations buy up homes and either rent them out at insane prices or just leave them empty while their value goes up. And it all worked out for the people who bought a home a few decades ago, but now it's a big part of their retirement plans. If they ever need
Dude, people who bought houses 10 years ago are now selling them for almost double. I literally know people who have done this. It's insane.
money they can simply downsize once the kids have moved out and pocket the differences, which is often hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it's those who were never rich enough to own a home to begin with, or people entering the market today, that are suffering the costs of this. With how crazy the ratio between wages and house prices has gotten, lots of people will never be able to afford to buy. They'll be stuck renting, watching thousands and thousands of dollars go into someone else's bank account. Rent prices along with housing prices have massively increased. It's something that's only gotten worse with time. The biggest rise in rents has happened recently, and there's no signs that that's going to stop. Between 2019 and 2023, the average rent went up by over 30% across the US. They've outpaced wages across this same time period in 44 of the 50 largest cities in the US, which is yet another example of something that's only gotten more expensive in comparison to pay. Rent, food, utility bills, all the essentials have generally gotten more expensive compared to wages. While wages are beginning to catch up to some things like food prices, it's too
Are they? I don't think so.
little too late. 6 out of 10 Americans feel like the economy is in recession, but unfortunately it might just be the new normal. It's because people have been pushed out of the system entirely. Most people's finances are in bad shape, whatever the stock market might look like. Even if it does go up by a percentage point or two, they
What is the current statistic for America that most people don't even have $500 in their savings account or something like that? It's pretty ridiculous.
don't feel it. People are being squeezed so hard that they can't get the funds together to save for the future. A staggering 78% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck, scraping together what they can to survive. For lots of people, it's only getting worse. Over 50 million are now using food banks. 12 million rely on predatory payday loans just to see themselves through the week. And what's going to happen when all of these
Jeez.
people start entering retirement without anything?
Dude, getting a loan and you need to pay off the percent is so insanely bad. If you can't avoid a loan, do everything you can to avoid it.
Save for the future. It's these kinds of societal conditions that pave the way to tyranny, as when people go hungry and they don't have enough for their families, it builds anger and resentment. And we're already quickly getting to a place where there's no point for
As they say, people are only one day, one meal away from governmental change and riots and all of that good stuff. For 15 union rights, oh yeah, this is gonna work out great. If you thought finding a job was hard, wait until $15 is the minimum. Oh boy!
honest working people to still have faith in a system that has trodden them over and over again. And with more and more people coming into the West, more pressure on government services, a massively aging population that won't be sustainably lifted by Generation Z, it will cause massive tension in the West. And without any hope, people will do anything and support anyone who says they can make things better, no matter the cost. Right
Good times.
now, the left pretty much ignores that this is happening, pretending that everything is normal. Meanwhile, the right seems to co-opt this anger and tries to use it for their own purposes. But as we'll see, neither side of the spectrum is ready to deal with the massive societal changes that are about to take place. Automation is coming. It doesn't matter how
Oh boy, automation is gonna fail, I think, because people are not gonna accept it. Listen, we need jobs in some form, otherwise we're literally gonna just implode because it's boring. A job keeps you in either some form, at least busy. Unbusy human is a dangerous human, okay? And when everyone doesn't have anything better to do, shit's gonna go down in wild pretty fast. Anyway, that was Moon. Bye.